Hey there, sci-fi fans. Welcome to Dark Loops, where creative and scholarly nerds discuss HBO's award-winning series Westworld and ponder the eternal question, what does it mean to be human? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dark Loops Westworld. In this podcast, we discussed Westworld Season 3, Episode 4, The Mother of Exiles. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Jordan, cognitive psychologist, philosopher from Illinois State University. Joining me on the podcast are two Westworld-loving school psychologists, Dr. Leandra Parris and Dr. Tara Rains. Leandra and Tara, please say hi, state your affiliation, and tell us the best thing that happened to you this week.
So I'm Leandra Parris. I'm at the College of William and Mary, and the best thing that happened to me this week is I had my birthday, and I was woken up by my son telling me happy birthday, and it was very sweet, and then he left, and I got to go back to sleep, so that was like the best part.
That's amazing.
Well, happy birthday, Mother of Dragons.
Woo! I've never felt this old.
Well, you haven't been this old yet, so that
I know, right?
Right.
It all makes sense. My name is Tara Rains, and I'm an assistant professor of school psychology at the University of Denver. And the best thing that happened to me this week was I got to loot my sister's classroom. I feel like mine are always about family, so I guess it's a good thing. She teaches second grade, and they gave them a small window, a stagger to like go into their classrooms and get whatever they need for the end of the year. And so she had a bunch of food and snacks and stuff. So
there you go.
I went and looted snacks for my kids and sidewalk chalk and crayons and some other things to get us through this time of shelter in place. So
well, you're stocked up on positive reinforcers, right?
Yes. I have stickers, I have crayons, I have chalk, I have Cheez-Its.
The best thing that happened to me this week was to finally see science having an influence on how our culture is dealing with the current situation. It's been so abysmal for the past month or two to see the non-science driving the system. And now science seems to be pretty much in control. And that makes me, if not happy, it makes me less sad. So on that note, before we begin discussing the episode, I want to let the listeners know that in the About section of the Dark Loops Production YouTube channel, you can find links to papers the three of us have published regarding the work we do as psychologists. And massive love to everyone out there during this incredibly difficult time. It's been heartbreaking to watch some of the decision-making being undertaken over the past few weeks. My deepest sympathies to anyone whose life has been tragically altered in one way or another by these very trying times. And in addition to all the healthcare workers out there, big love to those amazing people in Wisconsin who braved the pandemic and voted in the primary. You are my heroes.
Yes.
Ditto.
All righty then. So, into the episode. How much crow do we have to eat?
I'll eat it I will take it. I don't even need ketchup. Like, I was so wrong, and I was so pleased with the outcome that I am so okay being wrong.
I feel so, like,
manipulated.
I kept saying, why not just say it's Teddy? Why not just say it's Teddy? Like, why are you holding, like, there has to be some sort of aha moment, and I was not disappointed. And I even remember being like, I'm confused about how she got from one body to the other, but like, whatever, I'm going to suspend disbelief. And
right.
I'm just so glad that I didn't overthink it and I just let that all happen. Right? Like,
I totally agree. I have to say, I felt for the first time in this series, like I was being written at. In other words, oh yeah, you've seen this show, so you know who Dolores is, you know who Teddy is. So we're going to play with that. We're not just going to show you live life. We're going to play with your mind in the sense of your experience as viewers. And I'm fine with that. It worked out okay. But they played Teddy so hard last week.
They totally did. And I guess what the takeaway is that, like, Teddy's still a piece of Dolores. Is there some like romantic, beautiful thing we're supposed to see in that? Or they were just playing straight up trickster? I don't know.
But also really makes the scene where she is in the hotel room with Charlotte, who we thought was Charlotte Teddy, and lays down in the bed with Charlotte Teddy. We had a whole version of what that meant that is completely wrong, right? She
She
was
took care of herself.
Yes, I
herself,
love
but
it. I love self-care. I love self-love.
right. No, it was fun to go back and reframe that and think it through again. I give him a lot of credit. So the first scene, we're at the home of the man in black. He's drunk, toting a hand cannon, hasn't bathed in a while, and he's letting everyone know that he knows who's real and who isn't. He seems to be dreaming or tripping about the night of his wife's suicide. His daughter appears. He says, "You're not here." She says, "None of us are here. We're all dead because of you." So he shoots her again. He says, "I didn't think you were real." She says, "How can you ever be sure?" He states in typical patriarchal fashion, "I'm in control." She says, "So am I just something in your code?" He says, "My choices are real." She was never really answering the question. He's just throwing in all these machismo, "I'm in control" lines. And he says, "My choices are my own." And she says, "Oh, so you chose to kill me. Are you free and evil or blameless and helplessly enslaved?"
And that was my moment.
All right, well then bring it on.
I actually took a screenshot of that moment because I love that she questions. I think that we deal with that a lot in psychology, and I think that we deal with that a lot in life. The idea of are you free in making bad choices, or are your choices driven by something else, and therefore you're blameless? And I think a lot of people struggle with that when we talk about even right now, control, right, and being able to do things. So I just really thought that it was so nonchalantly said by her, but I think it's a huge thing for him to think through because everything he's done, he's blaming on other people, but he made the choice. And so he's trying to say he's not evil, but you can't have it both ways is what I love about that moment. And he wants it both ways. And we always do that, right? When it's a good thing, it's our choice. When it's a bad thing, someone made me do it. And I just find that psychological distortion to be one of the things I see most often with my clients. And it's just such a human thing, I guess, is what I'm saying.
It totally is. In the work that I do, I often write about how we say things like choice and blame as a way to manage our identity. In other words, it's not so much whether or not we have choice or whether or not we're blameless, but the fact is we're trying to protect our identity, so those concepts become important. Right?
Yeah.
I chose to do that. I didn't choose to do that. And that's what you're trying to determine in a murder trial. All the different factors that could have influenced someone dying. We try to figure out if the person chose to do it when all kinds of other things come into play. So
I thought it was and I think we do it with other people too. We tell them, well, you're free to make those decisions when we don't actually have an understanding of what it means to be free to make decisions. And I'm seeing a lot of that with the pandemic right now, blaming people or making judgments as though they actually have a choice when society didn't give them one. And so this whole thing just hit a spot, I think, that was just very sensitive for me right now. Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, that gets back to the idea that using the concept choice is for the purpose of being able to blame. In other words, it's not like there's a choice, but the issue is I'm going to use the concept choice. So if you do something that I don't like, I can say you chose to do it. Why does that matter? Because then I don't give you any empathy and I put you somewhere else, right? So it seems like the concept choice has more social value than individual value.
Yeah, it allows you to be judgmental for sure. Absolutely.
Very much so. She says, "Finish the game, Dad," and hands him a razor. We'll talk more about the Man in Black's journey at the end when we talk about the final episode, but I actually absolutely love what they do with him in terms of his journey and the maze and the idea of choice. Tara, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I watched that scene a couple times with the two of them going back and forth, and I have some questions. We'll wait till we get to the end because I just have some uncertainty about how the whole thing played out, the whole hallucination series.
Yeah, I got you. Charlotte stops him just before he's about to cut himself. He asks, "Where is she?" Charlotte says, "Who?"
That scene of him cutting himself, I'm just gonna say it because I'm okay being wrong. It made me think back to Charlotte cutting herself, and like it just is making me wonder if there's two consciousnesses. I don't know.
Let's just go consciousness S's.
It's
Or
yes.
not.
Like, is there like a man in black pearl inside? Because remember we saw the thing last season with him as a host. Like, is there a pearl inside a consciousness? And so they're like fighting. I don't know.
Well, one thing that they do well in this show is, I think Leandra called it the grounding impact of violence, right? Violence to others sort of grounds your efficacy over another, and the violence to yourself grounds your efficacy over yourself. And it seems like suffering seems to be a baseline phenomena to indicate who and what we are and what kind of impact we can have, at least if you're the man in black. Right?
I do love that you picked up on that, because I think the fact that we're struggling to figure out who's a host and who's not is really indicative of how human they are, because you can't tell the difference between his struggle to reconcile his guilt with, manifested as his daughter versus someone else's reconciliation with having two different sort of programs going and integrating, right? I love that you can't tell the difference between a human struggle and a host struggle, because in reality, they're on the same plane now, right?
No, exactly. So he says, "Where is she?" And Charlotte says, "Who?" He says to Charlotte, "You're not real either." And he points a gun at her. She kung fu's the gun out of the way, and she starts talking about the hostile takeover of Delos. Once they start talking about money, William gains his focus. He doesn't seem to care if Delos is taken over, says he's welcome to it. She keeps digging in to make it more personal for him. She says, "What about your life's work?" He says he's not stealing it from me. He's stealing it from you. And then she says, Sector 16 data is what he wants.
Wait, pause.
I have a question. Are we supposed to know what data she's referring to? Did I miss something? Did I just
the data?
Like, she says, like, the Section 16, like, when they were talking, it felt like he was going to have access to a certain subset of data that, or are they just talking about all of the real people data?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss some sort of conspiracy theory. I'm looking for everything in this show. They got me so overthinking everything.
Well, what I really liked is as she kept provoking him, trying to make things more personal for him to bring him into focus, they finally end the scene with both of them in frame. And in that moment, they're equally in the frame, and they're both going back and forth about money and power. And I just like the way the scene opened, his whole stories opened up with in disarray and delusions and hallucinations. And all of a sudden, let's talk about money. Everything's perfectly clear. So paying attention is simultaneously keeping focus and keeping everything else at bay.
I want to back up a little bit. I think a pivotal point in that interaction was when she says, "real enough to not want a gun pointed in my face."
Yeah.
Right?
Enough.
And like, doesn't say, "yes, I'm real, no, I'm not," but like kind of skirts around the answer. I thought that was clever. That was clever.
Very clever. And it's a whole nother take on the philosophy of mind, right? Some people argue that, the Turing test argues that if you can't tell if it's not a human, then it's a human. So she's just being pragmatic. I feel threat. So get the gun out of my face. I'm real enough to experience that.
I love it.
Go ahead.
I just said I love it. I love that whole, I didn't even pick up on that. You're absolutely right. That was so cool.
So this next scene, we have Bernard and Stubbs in Victorville, USA, which is a real place, just northeast of LA.
It's funny. It shows Victorville, and I said out loud, "that place is a shithole." And then, like a few minutes later, Stubbs goes, "this place is a shithole," and I was like, "Yes, I've been to Victorville."
The whole Victor thing is hilarious because that whole scene is a Pulp Fiction call out, right? With Stubbs looking like Victor Vega wearing a Hollywood tour T-shirt in the cold shower outdoor scene where John Travolta's character is wearing that
Yes.
San Diego College t-shirt.
After the shoot the
Getting
guy.
hosed down.
I'm not gonna lie, I went supernatural. Maybe it's just because like I'm like dead set on the season finale, but I'm like, this is a
with the whole-
supernatural feel because they're in a motel and they're
Yeah.
joking around with each other, and he's very gruff, like, what are we doing? And he's like, no, like I loved it because I was like, oh, but I think I see supernatural in everything right now because the show's about to end and I'm sad. So.
Well, there is a little bit of a buddy movie thing going on there, right?
Yeah, I really liked it. I
and
liked
it is-
seeing Bernard have a buddy, like a
Yes.
fun
Yeah.
buddy. Like he's been so serious and so scared and anxious, and so to see him actually interacting with someone in a friendly buddy cop kind of way was fun.
And someone who has a sense of humor and is perfectly comfortable being a host. No
Yeah.
identity confusion at all. So Bernard can lean on him at any moment.
Well, I think it's making Bernard more human, right?
Yes,
Like we're seeing more
exactly.
humanity in Bernard through Stubbs as being comfortable being a host.
Some of the dialogue here is really kind of funny. So Stubbs says this is a shithole, and he remembers the murder simulation theme park with fondness. Let me see. He questions Bernard's ability to freeze Liam with his fancy garage door opener. Bernard gives it a try. Stubbs freezes. Frack you, Bernard.
There are so many like great
yeah.
show call outs in this
Yes,
moment, right? Like just so
exactly.
many great show call outs.
Agreed.
Exactly. So in the next scene, we see Caleb trying on very fine clothing. He doesn't like it. It's not his style. Dolores says they use plumage to identify themselves. It makes them easy to fool. Next scene, we see Sean Connery host gets Liam to give him his hash. I said hashtag, but it's a hash key.
Yeah.
Liam resists. Connery clone once again goes full on Highlander, regaling Liam with tales of his family fortune and Liam's ultimate lack of worth. Liam gives up the hash key. Connery sends Dolores the hash key. So we can start to see a plot developing here, right? Caleb and Dolores go to a high-end bank. It looked like Dolores pickpocketed that guy, or did she just bump into him so she could get him off to the side while she was thanking him? I'm not sure, but
She was taking his blood, right?
well, she did that pretty
She already knew
discreetly.
him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Took the
she
blood,
gets
like knocked him out, and yeah.
Yeah,
That's
she gets
right.
close
Going
enough
back
to him
then.
to assault him, take a blood sample, and inject the blood into Caleb. But all the while this is going on, someone's talking to her. And what I couldn't figure out, who's talking to Dolores and giving her intel? Because I don't think it was Connery because he wasn't around. So I don't know who was giving her the info at that point.
Is she just communicating with other computers? That was my assumption. She's got this like virtual assistant.
Yeah,
Virtual
I was thinking of it like a Jarvis from Iron Man, like just
There you
know.
go.
I mean, honestly, that's what I just assumed. Like this whole time, she's like, "Find me a hotel in this room, like book everything on both." I really, honestly thought it was just
that's a good
computer
point.
she's tapped into.
Exactly. We don't think it's Rehoboam, right?
I think it would be separate because it would be too into her movements, right? Like it would need to be.
I assume not, but I mean, it could be. Wouldn't that be a twist? I think if she could communicate and command that much of Rehoboam, like she wouldn't be on this quest. She would just do it.
Fair enough. So in the next scene, we're at a very high-end bar with Sarah and Maeve. Maeve orders sherry in the largest glass you have.
And they gave it to her in a glass, like Kool-Aid. Did you see that?
Yes.
Like
I didn't pay attention.
It was like this. Like it was just like a drinking glass, like a water glass with sherry in it.
That.
No, like they didn't even pretend.
No, it was just like a tall glass, like it almost looked like a breakfast glass, like tall and skinny,
Yeah.
I'm like, really? I couldn't tell if I should be offended that was what they thought the biggest glass would be, because clearly
and it wasn't even full.
Glass. Yeah, and it wasn't, So anyway.
Exactly. And she says, if you wanted to impress me, you should have taken me to Paris. Of course, this presses a button. He says, oh, you don't know about Paris, do you? And then he has memories of seeing Paris, what looked to me like it was nuked. Right? It looks as though Paris had been nuked.
Which made me immediately think of the show about the trans scene in New York in the 80s on Netflix called Paris is Burning.
Oh, I've not seen
Add
that.
that to your watch list. Paris is Burning.
All righty then.
It complements Pose nicely.
He, after he has that memory of Paris being nuked, he has this line where he says, "So you'll forgive my loyalty to my kind? It's hard won."
Mm.
Do you guys believe Sarek is human?
Yeah, so that confused me because if Paris was nuked or something happened, I assumed it would have been man-made. And so being on his kind side, like, I guess the assumption I made there is like either you're saying that this happened because of host or artificial intelligence, or I just didn't understand what he was saying there, because I guess when I saw Paris burning, I assumed it was, a nuclear weapon, right? It had been detonated.
Yeah, I think that's all meant to unroll his character slowly.
But I wonder if he's a human who just has that Thanos thing where he feels like if he can get the right formula for humanity, then humanity will be fine, right? And so he has the answer in Roboham by choosing everybody's life, putting everyone in a lane, and then it'll be okay. Like that will keep, the nukes from happening again as long as everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, then that's very much a Thanos trauma story, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Thanos saw his planet destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, Dolores has the same issue.
Yeah, no, I think that's Tara. I love that point too, because he's a child. He's watching the uncontrollable happen. He's not going to have a lot of control. There's so many attachment theory that can go into that too. But this idea of I know better. I'm going to save you from yourself.
Yes.
That's an interesting swing on it. I like it. I like where he's going with that.
And
that allows him to be human,
Yeah, it does. And to square off against Dolores in a way that you don't know which one you want to win. Like, you do, but you don't, right?
I have a favorite.
So I'm gonna push this issue a little bit, because if his trauma-driven decisiveness makes him more human, does Dolores's trauma-driven decisiveness make her more human?
Absolutely. She cares enough to give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, she's not like Stubbs, who's like, it is what it is. I'm going to do that.
Go ahead.
But you know what I mean? Like, she does. Like, I do think it makes them very similar, which is why I think having them go head to head is, some of the best stories are having two people. So think about Daredevil and Fisk. Like, they both have the same agenda of saving New York. They just have different views on how that's going to happen. I think this is going to be something similar. They're going to have a very similar path, only she's trying to help the host and he's trying to help the humans. And I think it's going to make some interesting dialogue when they come head to head.
I do. And I think they're just mirror images of each other now. In other words, they're both more than willing to kill hosts or people to make the world their better place. And you're going to have characters like Maeve and Stubbs and Bernard, and maybe even a few humans we'll meet who are a little more nuanced. And maybe, I don't know if we're really going to identify with Dolores in a couple episodes if she keeps being, I would argue, a mirror image of Sarek, and we'll start identifying more with Maeve. Yeah, that's the way to go. But go ahead, Tara, you're going to say something.
I think they have in common that they don't trust humanity. Right. And I think that shared distrust, I'm hoping at some point in the season will kind of, I don't know, bond them in some way. I don't know.
No, that's true. And interesting enough, they both have their foil, right? So Sarek has Maeve and Dolores has Caleb, right? And so hanging around with those two over the course of the next episodes will flesh out more degrees of freedom in their thinking about what it means to make a better world. I mean, we'll see. I think someone's going to go full on Thanos.
Yeah, as long as they don't full on melt the Iron Throne, I'm okay. Honestly, as long as they don't team up and then one betray the other.
All right, we're just going to get to it right now because you brought up the Game of Thrones reference. But Mother of Exiles, I'm sorry.
Yes.
But the way this episode ended up, with her putting herself in everyone, you might as well have called this Mother of Dragons. Right. In other words, a note I have for near the end is Dolores really going the way of Daenerys, at least the way she was
Mm,
written in season 8. And then,
mm,
so I don't think the Mother of Exiles is an accident, right? I think they're kind of
mm.
foreboding or foreshadowing Maeve's, or at least they're trying to get us to think that way, that Maeve is going the way of Daenerys, which is not the way Daenerys would have gone if I'd have written the script, but that's the way they wrote the
It
script.
was kind of clunky at the end.
Yeah. I just think it's also interesting sidebar that Game of Thrones is such a cultural whatever now that we automatically read that title and knew what they were trying to say, right? Like it's
Absolutely.
already in, I mean, they're both HBO, so like whatever. But so anyway, I did love that that was the title, and I do hope they don't go down that same path.
Well, the good thing they have now is they're building these fantastic characters like Maeve and Caleb. So if Dolores does go that way, it won't be like she's like in Game of Thrones, Daenerys was becoming the freer of slaves for 6, 7 seasons. And she was the progressive leader. And then in one season,
Right.
but here we have Maeve, who's been who she is, first 2 seasons, and she's never been on a season 8 Daenerys kick or a Dolores kick. So they have these foils built into the characters already. So I don't think they're writing all of this void of what went on in Game of Thrones.
See, I'm not a huge Game of Throneser. I
Right.
kind of off and on it until the very end, and then picked it up, and then went back and read what happened and all the. So I read the title and did not attach it to Game of Thrones, and thought about it literally like the Mother of Exiles, like the mother of all exiles, right?
Yes.
And attached it to William and how he was experiencing exile and how you see that throughout the episode, with it ending with him in confinement for mental health. And I was like, oh, like kind of like that's the mother of all exiles. So I took it a little bit more literally and didn't make the Game of Thrones association.
Which is probably the better route, right? Like, because like, like
I mean,
part of the Drogo little cameo, maybe that's what's bringing it. But I also think I remember it like came up on my feed something about Mother of Exiles was the original title for the Statue of Liberty.
Oh,
I'll have to fact check that, Scott. Like I just remember it like popping up and this idea of does it tie into the idea of being a safe harbor for those who are not protected by the system. So
that's actually very, very
they all
cool.
work.
Right.
Yeah, they do.
I think that's the best part is they all work.
They all work. That works.
Choose your adventure.
No, that's good poetry. So he says to Maeve, then I waited for you and Dolores to arrive, but you're not the threat. Humanity is always its biggest threat. He talks about being able to make a better world because now he has a map of the human mind created in a theme park of all places. The code to all the guest data is in Dolores's mind. And Maeve says, what's in it for me? And he says, I'll send you to your daughter's world. Dolores has the key to that world in her mind. And he says, let me show you something or I'll go back to your cage. She takes her to Bernard's house where the new hosts were built. And they find the Easy Bake host system there. And we see 5 signs on the computer screen that say unauthorized host, unidentified HCE. But we don't know who they are because there are no names, right? So you freeze frame it, you look, but we're still guessing.
So I guess for me, this is the part where he sells Maeve to win her over to his side. And I just thought it was like a shoddy sale. Like I didn't believe that the Maeve that I've come to grow and know and grow to love and know the last few seasons would be like, oh, okay, Dolores has the key to my daughter, strange man who had me trapped in a fake simulation. Now I'll help you. Right? Like to me, like the building, they didn't spend enough time for me selling that relationship and building that trust in a way that I think would make Maeve follow along.
Or at least commit herself to that path of
Yeah.
action that quickly.
Yeah.
I agree. You rarely see Maeve commit, right?
Yeah.
And that's her strength, is she's always 5 steps ahead of everybody in every simulation. He does seem to be holding her hostage in terms of her daughter.
Yeah.
And if we buy into the idea that Maeve will move the world for her daughter.
But she also sent her daughter to heaven, as far as she's concerned, right?
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
she sent her daughter to a place where she knows the daughter is okay. She knows the daughter's cared for by a number of people. And again, like I mean,
Right.
maybe we'll see more about this and learn more about this, but I just didn't feel like they sold it,
Right.
that she would. And if anything, they did the opposite. So then in the coming scene where he has the guy and the guy is like, go to the mortician, and then he kills the guy, like, to me that would make Maeve be like, okay, so I still can't trust you, right? Like,
well, that's
so
when he tries to sell her in that whole heaven and hell argument.
yeah,
This guy here, he's gone. Humans created heaven and hell to keep people in charge, but you guys, you do have a heaven and you do have a hell. And it seems like she buys it. But, we'll see. Everything she did after that looked like she had bought in, pretty clearly. We could find out later she was just riding the winter line, just seeing where it would take her,
I honestly, like, that's kind of my vibe I got, was that she doesn't feel like making a movement at this point means working with him. And so I think I would be happy if she were, as you said, still 3 steps ahead, and we just don't know what her end game is yet.
Right.
I think it is to her benefit to figure out Dolores's game, even if it's to join her. And so either way, she's got to do it,
There's something else that she's never said, but all of her language seems to imply human host. You guys are ridiculous. Those are just binaries that don't matter. I've got a whole world to live in. She's never said that, but everything she does reflects this idea that she doesn't care or host human. For her, what's meaningful is the essence of being, or the essence in the code. And I kind of like the way she doesn't spill those beans, right? She just keeps it to herself, right? The fact that I know there's no real difference here actually gives me an edge on all you people that buy into binary.
I judge you based on how you treat me regardless, right? And so I think that that's the lesson with Maeve.
Yes. So then the next scene, we find the man in black trying to shave. He doesn't like his old bathroom. He actually gives Charlotte the straight razor. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not giving anybody a straight razor near my throat.
No.
I've never done that in my life.
These scenes always make me nervous. Anytime there's a straight razor involved, like...
Oh, my God. And he starts clearly giving her orders, so we're back to full-on William. Charlotte says most of the people who knew about the off-book project were killed in the massacre. She says, everyone but you. Maybe you're the mole. She recovers pretty quickly. She changes the subject. She says she told Sarek the lost data. All the data were lost in a massacre, unless there's something he knows that we don't. So she's trying to get information from William. He changes the subject and says, if he gets evidence of if he takes over control of the company, he can get evidence of the project, and that puts us in a bad spot. So that's just William being William, Charlotte being Charlotte, playing it out. Next scene, we see Dolores and Caleb in an upscale bank. Caleb's blood marker is disintegrating, and they have about 15 minutes. They're the financial reps for a client. Dolores gives the desk clerk the hash key. There's a full account withdrawal. She says, the teller says your client's debt exposure will be high. Caleb goes full on Heisenberg and says, mind your own business. I actually love that. And it was cool when he did that. He just fell into it, just like Jesse used to do on Breaking Bad. And Dolores just gives him this look like, oh, you're a badass. That was quick. That was pretty good. Obviously, she's happy. The withdrawal requires an additional test because it's so large. Dolores passes a towel to Caleb because his hand might be sweating. She grips her pistol. The check works. Comments?
No,
Oh,
I felt like
well,
this is one of
dang it.
those like high intensity, but
Yeah.
it's a very rote scene that we see a lot in shows where it's like, oh,
Yes.
we've cleared it. Oh, there's one more thing, right? But
Yes.
I know they're trope and I know that they're very set, but they're also very fun to watch, right? Because with Westworld, you never know what direction they'll take it. So
Yeah, of all the episodes we've seen so far, for me, this was the least philosophical, the least psychological per se. It was more action oriented, it was more plot moving, and I'm fine with mentally chilling out for a little bit while I'm watching some of these scenes. And thoroughly enjoyed it. In the next scene, Maeve is wandering the streets of Singapore by herself. Looks like she's reading the e-waves,
Yeah,
disturbing. Go ahead.
she's like communicating with everything as she's
Yes, yes.
going.
Exactly. And you just see all these things going kaput and haywire as she walks kind of in her wake. I thought that was really cool sci-fi. I've actually never seen a scene like that before in sci-fi where a being that's communicating with all the local technology is sort of destroying it or doing something to it as they walk through it, and you see it in their wake. I just thought that was kind of an original shot. Uh, then there's a moment where she stops and silences all the activity. She finds her target working as a bouncer, or at least she gets to where she's supposed to be going. She says she's looking for the mortician. The guy, she puts a gun in the guy's pants or puts his gun in his pants and shoots his leg. She enters the mortician's operating office. She says, I respect a woman who runs her own establishment. She then kills one of the thugs like James Bond, not even looking at him. Maeve then mentally rattles the mortician's implant. She couldn't help Dolores. She doesn't smuggle bodies, so she took Dolores to the Yakuza. More plot stuff? Okay, cool.
yeah, I mean, I'll say I love the supportive woman statement there, like the sort of like, listen, I don't have time, but can I just say kudos? Like
Yeah,
I
it's
wish we did that more. Like I have this like quote on my door that's like a real queen adjusts the other one's crown or something like that, you know?
but let's not pretend that she's like, yeah, kudos to you for having your own place, but I will shoot you if I don't get what
Yeah,
I
right.
want.
No, I think
Yeah.
that's a
I
form of
mean,
respect. I think it's respect to be like, I
it's gangster
appreciate what you're
respect.
doing, but you're also just as vulnerable.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like I think that's the same thing.
You know, I actually misstated that. It's a type of predator respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So the next scene we see Liam at an utterly ridiculous posh auction, and his ridiculous friend, I don't remember his name, says, tonight is not about dead girlfriends, it's about unabashed self-gratification. I'm listening to this and I'm saying, they are writing every single word here to just offend me. I mean, all of this is being written to be offensive. Do you guys agree?
I don't know that it's meant to be offensive as much as it's to tell a story about where humanity is, right? And this very much aligns with the same humanity that would go to a Westworld. Like
Right.
these people are so rich that they would go and abuse robots that look like people for fun. They
Right.
would also be like, "Oh, dude, too bad your girlfriend died. Take some drugs and buy a hooker." You know,
Yes.
like let's ease your pain with hookers and blow. Like it's
Well, yeah, you're right. I
yeah.
think one thing they're doing well in this show is showing us where the humanity of the world of privilege is, right?
Yeah.
And we started to get a glimpse of what I would call Midwestern psychology in the character of Caleb and in the character of Dolores taking him out for lunch, right? We're starting to see those subtle, small moments of kindness that I would argue is not the world of privilege, but is the world of most people's lived lives. What you referred to as culture keepers, right? There's just a certain grace in everyday life that's not about consuming others, expressing wealth, collecting privilege. So I think you're right. And I just really hope that they go more into this world of small kindness. And I think that's the world that's going to change things in the end, unless it's just, yeah, got a damn wrong and everybody dies. All sex is commerce. If you don't think so, you're just being billed indirectly. Do we talk about that line? Nope. Okay. Besides, they're all registered. They've had their shots, and the money goes to charity. Oh my God! I mean, that last bit, the money goes to charity. Ugh, okay. Liam claims not to be interested. Sees a woman who looks quite a bit like Dolores. Now he's interested. Then Caleb and Dolores walk in. I thought your world would be so different from mine, but there isn't any difference at all. Dolores and Caleb plan to abduct Liam. He tries to pay for the girl. His test fails. It then fails again. He storms out like a spoiled brat. Who should appear but Bernard and Stubbs? They try to Hulk Liam with the garage door opener. It doesn't work. Stubbs pulls a gun. The only guy not wearing a tie at the party, by the way. I just love that everybody else is wearing a tie and Stubbs just here to work. Probably had an argument back at the hotel, like, there is no way I'm wearing a damn tie, Bernard. That's just all there is to it. That's my last straw.
I'll kill whoever you want, but I'm
say
not
again?
going to wear a tie.
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I want to say that in this sort of world, that would be me. I'll kill whoever you want, but I'm not putting pants on for it. Okay? Like,
I ain't wearing no pants. Then all of a sudden, Dolores starts shooting at them. They escape or they hide. Dolores and Stubbs fight. They don't really want to fight. They kind of have a back and forth. Good to see you again, but yeah, I'll fight you. They go back and forth. She eventually pushes him over a railing. The audience thinks it's a show, or they don't care. What do you guys think of that fight?
So I'm wondering, okay, so first of all, I have to say this whole scene was stunning. It was absolutely beautiful, from the sex workers to the moving art and the background to the mask. Like, it was super well executed. And there's this moment when Dolores and Stubbs are fighting, and she hits him and blood splatters, and it looks like it's a part of the art behind where the blood splatters.
Very cool.
I mean, just totally stunning. But I also wonder if in this setting, like, no one's responding to the fight, right? And part of it's because everyone's on these psychotropics, but I wonder if part of it is people think the fight is part of a sex act or part of what someone has paid for, you know? And so I wonder if him falling off, you know, I'm just waiting for him to, like, get up and meet us around back, you know, and be like,
No.
fuck, I lost Bernard. Or fudge,
It's like part of the show. No,
yeah.
You're absolutely right. Exactly. The next scene, Maeve visits the Yakuza, uses a Jedi mind tricks to open locks and enter. Thuggy Yakuza threaten her in Japanese. She responds in the same language, the same thuggy tone. She takes over the aim control systems on their guns. There's a shootout, but of course she wins because she's aiming their guns for them to shoot each other. Go ahead, Tara.
No, I was just saying, using her mind. That was
Exactly. One dude with a short samurai sword attacks. Of course, he's quickly dispatched, and Maeve enters, and that's where they stop that scene.
Well, and I think it's also really convenient that she speaks Japanese. I was like, come on, writers. You're prepping us for this in season 2.
I've not seen a language she can't do.
Yeah, I thought, so I remember, like, Adam kind of pausing, and he's like, wait, so, like, is there a language that she doesn't speak? It's like the universal translator for, like, Star Trek or something. Like,
you know what?
She's constantly
communicate with the machine so she can know everything.
Right. So, like, I felt like I just kind of read it more as, you know, like I said, like in Star Trek, everyone can understand each other because there's a translator. I feel like she has a built-in translator for everything, and that gives her power. At the same time, you're absolutely right. Like, what a convenient thing to write into your superhero woman. Like,
yes. I think they outfitted her with that new C-3PO module, right? So she can understand all languages. In the next scene, the man in black walks out of the house. Totally head to toe man in black. I'm going to say Ed Harris looks awesome in a black outfit.
he looked much better here than at the beginning. It was a very stark change. Like, at the beginning, I was like, dude, the vomit, like, I hope that's vomit on your shirt. Like, and so to see him come out dressed like that was almost kind of like how much his physical appearance really is driving how you interpret his character, right? And so the fact that he as an actor can go from how he is at the beginning to walking out of that house like he owns the damn world
Yes.
I gotta
It's
give
like-
props. Like if there's gonna be an Emmy for something, like I need it to be for that, right? So
Yeah.
like, how privileged do you have to be that you can go from rock bottom or were you hallucinating or whatever to just suddenly within a day you're back to ruling the world again? Well, for a moment anyway, right? So,
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I
go
don't
ahead,
know. I
Tara.
think that might be all of us at the end of this quarantine.
Yeah. For me, it takes 3 days. It's the difference between Saturday at 10 a.m. and Wednesday at 11 a.m. when I'm at work.
100%. It's the difference between me not taking a shower to homeschool and me taking a shower to homeschool. Like it's just
It's why we post these audio only, right?
exactly. Lie. Like I keep making jokes about not wearing pants, but I haven't worn them in days. Like,
all right. TMI here. TMI here.
Kid.
Let me see. So we don't have much time. He says, well, tell them to wait. I'll come when I'm ready. They work for me. That's just exactly what you say when you're
Mhm.
William, the man in black. He
Excuse me
sees
while
his
I come out
daughter.
of rock bottom.
Say it
They can
again.
wait. They can wait while I get my life together.
Yeah, and along with what I love is, as you said, with the disheveled look he had at the beginning of the episode to the tight black line look he has right now, that's also reflected in his mental state, right, in his character, and it's just all focused. It's all clear.
They can wait while I put my privilege on. It's fine.
Exactly.
It's cool.
Dressed the part. Yeah. He sees his daughter in the mirror. He says, "You're not real." If she says, "I'm not real," she says, "If I'm not real, then you're stuck with me." He explains the many, many choices he's had to make. I chose to shoot you because I thought you were a host. And that argument ends. So the next scene, Maeve walks into the Yakuza den. She has a battle with a samurai sword against a machine gun. The sword wins. She stabs a guy against a barrel full of host glue, it looks like. And then the boss man walks out, says, "Hello, Maeve." She looks surprised. "Musashi?" He pulls a gun, aims at Maeve, then he shoots the mortician.
I like it.
Yeah, again, this is a lot of plot moving in this episode. Gorgeous, well scripted, well acted. And that
There
dude,
is. Did anyone else have a moment of like, why bring him back and not Hector?
Well, I mean, no. I mean, my moment was like, why bring him back at all?
Right.
Yeah.
Wait a
I was
minute,
like,
man. She didn't bring him back. That's Dolores.
Right, but we don't know that yet.
body.
We don't know that yet, no.
Right, but like in that moment, like I had a moment and I'm like, yeah, but Tara's right. Like his body, like
His
why?
body, like, why make that body again? Like, why not just make?
I guess because he's Asian, and so like she's trying to like fit him into that culture that's there. But
And then he wasn't already there, and she could just, I don't know.
I think the body's a good disguise if you want to put a plant in the Yakuza.
not only that, but the
If that's
actor's
you.
great. So bringing him back was just
Yes.
a really great
I mean,
decision.
that too. That I appreciate it.
Always very well dressed, never disheveled. All right, so in this next scene, we see Bernard forcing Liam to the car. Caleb comes up from behind him and puts a gun to Bernard's head. Bernard asks him, "You're working with them, are you? Are you one of us?" So there's this nice moment where first he says them, and then he says, "You're one of us?" So in the next scene, Maeve is talking to Musashi, and she says, "She brought you out here?" And he says, "Yes, after you left us to die." She says, "I didn't leave you. You wanted to stay." He says, "Did I? Did you really give me a choice? Or Hector? Or Clementine? You made that choice for us." And she says, "That's not you. Who did Dolores put in you? Is that you in there, Teddy?" That's just a great scene.
Yeah, I felt like it was, as he was talking, I'm like, would you really reframe it that way if you were them? Like if you suddenly realized the power that she had, would you start questioning your motives back in that moment? But then, yeah, of course Dolores would question it, right? And because she's got something Dolores doesn't have.
Mm-hmm. In the next scene, Bernard and the Sean Connery look-alike are having a conversation. Bernard says, "Why did she host you and not Liam?" Right? "And who are you really?" Right? So even what I love is that all these quote unquote hosts are now questioning everybody else's identity, right? They're the ones that are trying to figure out who's who's what real host. Are you human or are you not? And the only one that doesn't play that game is Maeve.
Yeah, she doesn't care.
Yeah,
She
Well, doesn't care.
doesn't matter. How do you treat me? That's all that matters.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, there's a great scene in the manga I told you about, Ghost in the Shell, where the female android is suffering existential angst because she doesn't know if she's just an android or what. And one of her partners says to her, well, people treat you like a human, so what's the problem? And the idea there is that even if we're what we call human, we don't feel human if we're not treated that way by other people. That's what dehumanizing people is all about. So even our own individual sense of humanness is really a social phenomenon as opposed to individual. In the next scene, we see Charlotte and the man in black, and he's been yelling at his hallucinatory daughter and walks out of the house. And Charlotte says, "Did she answer you?" And Charlotte reveals that she knows him better than anyone. "I know you down to your bones." Right. And she just gives him this look, and you start feeling exactly the same way you felt last week when Dolores was in the elevator with Charlotte and said, "I got extra rooms." And Charlotte says, "So you can kill me?" He said, "Yeah, it's Teddy." Right. And then
No, exactly. So this is when I was like, all right, I'm going to put aside my self-doubt. They're totally right. It's Teddy. I'm just going to accept that it's Teddy. But who knows him better than Teddy, right? So like, this should have been the first clue.
No, they're starting to, and it's fun to have those switches flip, but you do feel like they're writing at you, because you're a fan of the show. But I'll give them that. They've worked hard to create a space where we can reflect on our memories about the space. By the way, quick side note, I get in arguments about Rogue One all the time. Do you guys like Rogue One?
Honey, that is the best.
I like Rogue One. Now, let me make it clear. I'm not like an ultra fan of the Star Wars universe. I'm into it, but it's nothing like
Star Trek. No, completely. I'm a big Star Trek fan. Like Tara knows. Like that's Tara and I bonded over Star Trek. Like I think Tara and I may be the only ones who like Deep Space Nine. Like
Tara, did you finish Picard?
I have not finished Picard. I'm on episode 7.
Right. We'll save that conversation for when you're finished because the end is stunning. 7. But one of the reasons I really love Rogue One is because it's a vignette movie. So when I was growing up watching World War II movies in the 60s and the 70s, like Force 10 from Navarone, The Dirty Dozen, these were movies that were little small stories from the whole World War II background. And we knew about that background from history and such. Rogue One is nothing but a vignette movie from the Star Wars universe that doesn't make any sense unless you saw those movies. And I just think that's a real accomplishment for a chain to have created this universe we know, and we just come into this one little vignette flick. And then the last 30, 40 seconds of that movie with Darth Vader going full on ninja with the lightsaber was almost my favorite part of the entire series. I just love that final scene. But a lot of people don't like Rogue One because they didn't think they cared about the characters. But for me, I just thought it was a huge.
Oh, I think they cared about the characters a ton. I think anyway, that's another podcast. That's another situation. But I think I know where you're going with this in terms of you've created an entire world where people can automatically look at it and start to understand what's happening, right? Yes. And so I think there, Adam, when he saw the part where she said, "I know you down to your bones," that's when he actually knew it was Dolores.
Yes.
Because he was like, she was with him on the train. She's the reason he made his switch. She's the one he tortured for that entire time. So for him, I think he had a better wide scope. Like he wasn't narrowed in his scope of trying to figure out who she was. And so I think, like you said, he had this entire narrative to build from, and he automatically knew it was Dolores.
Same. That was my pearl clutch moment. I was like, and I'm so wrong. It's like I'm stunned and I'm wrong and I love it and I'm excited. And then we rapid fire see that she's like everybody. So
yes, exactly. And the fact that they did that, which is a huge, huge event for Dolores, particularly at the end when she comes out in her cornflower blue dress, that is like vintage episode 1. And for them to take that loop and have it happen in episode 4 of a season, it's not the finale, it's like episode 4. It's you're feeling like, wow, this is really big. And I was just a little surprised, but I was impressed that they had it happen like in a episode 4.
Well, I felt like they were kind of, hopefully, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
closing a chapter, and they're saying,
Yeah.
okay, enough with the backstory. Now we're going to hit play, and like this thing is going to go at a high rate of speed. So, I don't
No,
know.
exactly. And
Because it
um,
was season finale-esque. It very much was.
oh, and it's just, we'll get to that last scene. I just love the way they ended it. So then he knows it's Dolores, and he screams and throws a fit, and they throw him. They're actually employees of a mental health facility. They take him away.
Which is fitting because he needs
Yeah.
one regardless. Like, I understand that maybe her reasons for putting him there are not for his best interest, but like, let's be honest, he needs one.
No, he absolutely does. He's pretty gone, right?
Maybe, right?
Or
Like,
not.
well, I think we're assuming that this is organic and not orchestrated. Like,
Right.
we're assuming that Charlotte hasn't, or Dolores hasn't been drugging him in some way, or hasn't programmed him to have these hallucinations if he's the host version of William, or, right? Like, we're assuming he belongs in a mental hospital because this is something that's happening on its own and wasn't contrived or orchestrated in some way.
Okay, so you're
That's a good point.
totally on target, because I would argue it was contrived, because it gives her an authentic reason to take control of Delos.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
No.
he says his bit. He's out of the picture. Nobody doubts her. Boom, she's in charge.
I am interested to see, is this going to be that she nudged him, like she picked up on an already like vulnerable spot and nudged, or is he like wearing glasses the whole time and doesn't realize it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be more interesting if she, for me at least, if she was nudging it, because I just want to, I don't know why. I'm going to say this once and then I'm going to let it go. I want to like William. I want him to end up being like,
You want some
I don't know,
redemption.
not like him because like everything he's done is obviously horrible. Like, you could never really
Not everything.
right, but like who he was when he was younger, right? And like that whole thing when he was the white hat and he was so eager and so earnest in protecting Dolores, and like I want that to come back in the end. I want that to be where he ends up. And so I think I'm putting more into him than I should be because I want him to redeem himself based on his earlier version of himself.
Could I go as far as to say as you want him asking for forgiveness?
I don't think he will. I
Right.
want him. He can never redeem himself for what he did to Dolores ever.
No, ever.
I don't know where I want from him, but I don't want it to be that he's purely evil, right? And Tara, I know you wanted to say something.
No, I think you're right in that it would be nice to see some more nuance and less of him as being portrayed as the eternal bad guy, right? I was gonna say I feel like Dolores isn't done with him. And as we saw when she like took some blood, like right as he was going in. So I wonder if she's going to put a pearl in him if he's in this mental hospital and no one even knows that he's in this mental hospital, right? Like,
yes.
Like, has she tucked him away where no one will find him because, he's not done, essentially.
And you have a
I
good
agree.
because he can't harm himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He's not going to be able to harm himself. No one's going to be able to get to him. So she's put him in cold storage, basically.
Yep.
So
and give him what he wants, which is he finds the middle of the maze. But I think it's an interesting point because that might make more sense that he then enters the library when it's like completely old and destroyed, and now he's having an integrity check. Like, I feel like the timeline around when he enters the library versus when Dolores does right before everyone leaves, the difference in how that space looks makes me feel like it's later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that might help explain why we're seeing that man in black versus the William that we see in the insane asylum or whatever, mental hospital or whatever you want to call it.
I like that they called it a mental health facility. Usually people just call it a mental hospital. She called it a mental health hospital or something like that.
I'll tell you what, if I had the opportunity, I might teach a senior seminar on either this series or Watchmen. To be honest, right now, I'd rather do Watchmen because it's just 9 episodes and nonstop smart. This show, it's almost thoroughly about privilege. The Watchmen isn't And I'd love to teach one of these as a senior seminar. So we go back to Bernard and the Connery look-alike, and the Connery look-alike ends up with Bernard's mind clicker and says, after all the time we spent together, you don't recognize your oldest friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to admit, it took me a while. And then when I got it, it was so sad. It was just so sad, right? This was the person, I'm using the word person, that he raised to consciousness, right? And this was his intellectual child in a sense. And, you know, he doesn't recognize her. But in the end, I think he does. And then we get back to Maeve and Misoshi. And she says she took a whole bunch of pearls out with her. I assumed you brought someone else. You just made copies of yourself. You said you'd build a new world for all of us, but you just want it all for yourself. Misoshi, Dolores says, I'm sorry, Maeve. I can't let Sarek use you against us.
Yeah.
Stabs Maeve.
I know.
Dolores is defeating everyone, right?
So really quickly, do we think then that everyone else is backed up the same way Maeve was? That they're sitting in one of these little honeycomb backups? Or are they like gone?
Oh, that's a good question.
And can they ever be gone? Like, are the pearls backed up? Like, I think
that isn't that the heaven? Isn't that like the cloud? Like, aren't they backed up in heaven essentially?
Well, only those who made it through the rift, right? So people like Hector and Teddy and you know what I mean? So like, I'm just curious, like, are they still in play? I guess it would be my question is, we know that Dolores didn't bring them off of Westworld, but are they still lingering somewhere like Maeve was? Yeah.
I mean, maybe, like, if their pearls are still, whatever they did with the pearls, right? It looked like Sarek had a ton of pearls in that thing, but I mean, that could just be, that could have just been for the World War II piece of it. I mean, I don't know. I think that's an excellent question.
Or people they thought were worthy of being in that position, like they needed to like control it, they couldn't put back into Westworld. But my other thing is that I think this explains, Scott, your question about why Bernard's look different. Because all the other ones you're seeing are copies, whereas Bernard is the original, right? Yes. So I think that kind of explains why his pearl looked different than everyone else's. So I think that's important for us to keep in mind moving forward when we see pearls. Like, do they look different, or do they look like the way her copies looked?
Ooh, good to know.
I don't know. I really liked my my shiny.
I know.
He was just supposed to be shinier than the rest of them.
I like how Musashi, which I thought I was like, okay, I guess this has to happen to keep the series going. But I was like, no, when Dolores doesn't get Maeve's pearl because she's got to run out because the fight is happening.
That was a cool scene. I'm just saying that was gangster cool. All right, I need that mind ball. No, don't have time. It's a little Hollywoodish. You don't have time to do a 2-second grab slice, but nonetheless, I don't have time.
I know, but
I like that she hesitates because it means that there's enough of her that recognizes that Maeve is worth considering before you do what you're about to do, right? And so I felt like I almost saw a little bit of the respect issue of like hesitation, because you're right, she totally could have just done that and pulled it off and walked away.
Right.
Or grab the body and run.
Yeah, like she's strong, like just over the shoulder.
But I got to tell you, the visuals in that scene were just crazy Tarantino. Right, just white host goo and blood. You know how long it took them to set that up? How many times they had to do it over and over to get that perfect yin-yang separation? I mean,
and that was my moment. Was Maeve laying in that intersection of host goo and blood. Right?
Well,
because it was so poetic. It was really beautiful. The depth was there. That was my moment.
I think it also made me think of her as a mother, right? Like curled in the fetal position, laying in the lifeblood of both humans and host. And sort of like, I think it always comes back to me with her as the mother of
Mother Earth.
Right? And so like, she's just sitting there basking again, like in the lifeblood of both.
Right.
Host
so more and more, Maeve is like Trixie from Kill Bill. And Dolores is becoming the female character with the black patch.
Daryl Hannah?
Yes. Yeah. Right. Who actually fails because she follows the world of men. right? She becomes like a female Darth Vader, trying to behave like Bill, and in doing that she fails, whereas Trixie takes on full-blown womanhood and doesn't struggle to be male, and in not struggling to be male embraces both life-giving and life-taking, and I think that's what we're going to see in Maeve.
It's like Sally Krawcheck versus Sheryl Sandberg. Did you read the Lean In versus Own It? You know, like Own It's like be a woman, Lean In's like be a man.
Yes.
I totally get Tara too, that sort of lean in versus own, and I think we're going to
Yes.
see Dolores and Maeve playing that out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a woman, I want to see both of them succeed.
Agreed.
I want to see what they do with that, because I think seeing both of them succeed means that they both walk away with the goal that they had for them. Maeve with her daughter. No, go ahead. Yeah, like, or Dolores with like her ultimate future. I don't know, but I know I'll know when I see it. I don't think there's necessarily a happy ending, but I do think there could be a successful.
What does that mean? I'm being a real jerk right now.
Right? Like, it means that they find their peace or come to some understanding with themselves. It means that Dolores is able to, like, care for herself the way she cared for herself in that hotel room, like, all the time, and isn't guided by this kind of rage. And I guess she was kind of ragey and impatient in the hotel room, but so
she finds a peace, and she becomes a little, I would say, a little more like Maeve, right? A little more other oriented. I mean, that's Maeve's thing. Yeah. Maeve's I'm not the writer. We'll see what they do.
Right. I think to your point, that's a good point though. Like, Dolores becomes a little bit more like Maeve, and Maeve becomes a little bit more Dolores, and sort of having more of a focus, right? And more of a sort of like this, she's kind of haphazard right now. And I think that is the plight of women. Like, we constantly have these different identities that are battling us, and how do we come to grips with those different identities? And I would like to see them play that out in Dolores and Maeve. Right.
I would as well. And I would like them to not worry about having them both be happy at the end. And what I mean is ambition is a struggle, right? Wanting the world to be a certain way is work. It's not about smiling. It's not about crying. It's about the work. I'll stop there.
No, I think I would agree. I don't think they both need to be happy. I think happy is a goal that no one, like, I always tell my clients, like, we're not trying to be happy. We're trying to be content. You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to be okay with what is and accepting what is. I think that, to answer your question earlier, that is what I would want for both of them, is to be okay and accepting of what is.
And maybe Dolores gets there a little bit through her interactions with Caleb. I mean, she's obviously impressed with him, right? As what she's experiencing as a human being, a unique human being, but I'd argue he's a unique being. And when she can see him a little more the way Maeve would see him, as not a surprising human, but a surprising being, I think she'll be a little more in the direction that you're talking about. But right now, she's still stuck in the human-host divide.
I just thought of this. So she seems like so taken aback by Caleb, but there's a lot of Caleb that's reminiscent of White Hat William.
Yes.
Yep. Yes, William was reticent to be part of the life.
Yeah, right? So I'm wondering, like, why she would, like, I don't know, maybe this is her type, right? Like, she's falling for this again?
Yes. And will end up unwittingly creating what but the system created in the Man in Black, right? And so I think these are all really great. It always makes me think of sort of, identity development, in that you have a cultural experience that causes you to sort of swing on two extremes until you finally come to that medium and that integration. And that is such an interesting point, because I think Caleb might be the redo.
Exactly. And the different paths she takes with Caleb will be the sort of redemption for her, or the contentment for her that you're looking for, that was never afforded her in Westworld, because she was always so, brutalized. And now she's on the other end of that continuum. And
she didn't have a choice with William either. Yes. It's not as though she chose to forget about him, right? And that was, I think he doesn't always act as though he appreciates the fact that it's not as though she chose that. I don't want to redeem him. I want to see White Hat William back, like Tara said. I want to see that come back because I feel like, why spend so much time showing that path if it doesn't come into play later? Does it really is this all it took to switch that completely off?
Yeah, well, I think his problem is the notion of real. And, progress for his character would be giving up on the notion of real. But he can't, and that's why he's so binary. And for me, his character is stuck on real because of love, because he was so dopey-eyed in love with Dolores. It took him so much work to fall in love and admit he was in love with the host. And then to have what happened, he just got stuck on real.
The system, man. It's the
system. Well, exactly. So Caleb and Liam are chatting. Liam asks, "Who are you?" Caleb says, "I'm with her." Dolores shows up. "Hello, lover," she says. Doesn't she look like Kitty from Blade Runner in this scene?
Mm-hmm.
As you guys noticed, the makeup, the mannerisms was all straight Daryl Hannah from Blade Runner. And it really accentuated the doll-like take on her at that moment. I'm not sure why they did that, but it just really stuck out to me.
I wonder if it's to strip a little of her humanity, because she does look cold.
Yeah.
She looks severe, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think, and they did this with, not to keep bringing it back, but they did this a little bit with Daenerys too, where they started pulling her hair further back and it was tied back in all these braids. And so you got these more stark profile sort of images of her. And so you're kind of seeing her as being more severe and more, I don't want to say in control, because it makes it sound like other people who aren't as severe are not in control, but like very focused, intimidating. Yeah.
Yeah. And it goes back to what they did with William, going from disheveled look to clean cut, shaven black suit. And I think we're cracking a sort of director's code here. If you want your characters to look focused, you clean them up and you put them very much face forward in the scene. Tara, you're going to say something. I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, it's also more masculine, right? Her look has lost the softness.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
Oh, man.
She's Sheryl Sandberg in this. She's lean in.
She's lean in.
And she actually does lean in. I mean,
that is such a good point, which I think makes it interesting when she shows back up later for William. That softness is back. I think that's a really good point. Sort of that lean in versus, I'm just going to have to think about that when we watch the next episode too and see like how many other ways does she do that.
And imagine being the actor or the actress and having them put you in that look and how much more focused you would feel in that look versus putting on a cornflower blue dress and having your hair, it would actually bring something to the embodied sense when you're dressed one way versus another.
Which makes me think about Maeve, because when Sarek originally has her wake up, her hair's pulled back very tight, which is different than how it is in other areas. It's almost like he's trying to force her into that. But then later we see it's a little bit more loose. It's like, that's such a great point, Tara. Now I'm going to be paying attention to everyone's hair and whether or not they're trying to be, you know what I mean? Like, right.
Well, because in that, if we want to go and unpack that, like Sarek needed her to be Dolores, right? And I think his approach is that he will fight fire with fire, right? Like, so he's got lean in and he's going to lean in farther, versus owning it. And he doesn't understand Maeve's style. I think maybe that's what going back to my assumptions about this disconnect between Sarek and Maeve. It feels like he doesn't get her.
No,
and maybe he doesn't yet.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we still have things to learn about him. I'm not even certain he's not a host. Just sort of a Rohibam probe.
Right. Well, I don't think he should get her. He's a white man. She's a woman of color with power that it supersedes his own. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think he should get her, but I think it is reflective of him trying to put her in a box.
Yeah. So imagine if he's a Rohibam probe being downplayed intellectually to push all her buttons to get her to do certain things, to get certain information for either Rohibam or who owns it, right? That would just be, in other words, they're all playing her by playing him down. I don't know. It's just an interesting possibility. And then we come to the final scene. This is William, the man in white, right? And I just love this contrast. He's utterly harmless, head to toe in a white straitjacket, totally William now, having reaped all the rewards of William's actions. He sees Dolores in her original cornflower blue dress. Mm-hmm. And then she says, this was Emily's last wish, that you spend days rotting in an institution, prisoner of your own sins. I guess you reached the center of your maze, William. But the maze is about understanding. You still don't even understand who you are. If any of this was your choice, wouldn't you have already known? Ask me the question, William, the answer you so desperately want to know. And he says, am I me? And she says, after touching his face sweetly, welcome to the end of the game. I just friggin' love it because that's his problem. He's stuck on real. Right? And am I me? If that's where you are, the game's over. Because if you can't get beyond the idea of reality and that there has to be a quote unquote real you, whatever that might mean, then you're stuck in how you experience everyone else. You're stuck in how you experience hosts. You're stuck in how you experience humans, and your game is just over. I just loved it. What do you guys think?
Was this your peace of mind?
Yeah, I just blathered it out without announcing it. I just love the idea of the maze. I'm a little sad that it left the show, you know? What are you laughing at?
No, I'm laughing because I messaged Tara earlier and I was like, $10 that his peace of mind is the am I me?
She's and like, I'm not taking that bet.
I'm not taking the bet. Yes, I knew it. Mostly because, one, I think your research really lends itself to the question of am I me?
Yes.
Right? Like the overall philosophical and cognitive implications of that. But I think also you've been waiting on William to arrive to the center, and we thought that he got to the center of the maze when he found nothing.
Right.
He had more to go. I love that he had another step to go in the real world inside himself before he actually got to the center of the maze, and that Dolores is the one who sort of delivers him there. Is just perfect.
It is. I gotta say it in writing. It must have been so satisfying because I don't think they had that scene in mind when they were writing season 1. Right. I just think over time they kept writing and they came to that scene where he's binary again. He was the man in black. Now he's the man in white. He's William again at the other end of the consequences of his actions. And
eventually he's going to have to be the man of gray, though, right? Like he's going to have to come. No, I'm serious. When we talk about identity development, like he's bouncing back and forth, and eventually he's got to come to terms that he's both. And he's going to have to be the man of gray. And so he's going to have to figure that out, or he's never going to leave that damn room.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't disagree. I think they have so much potential with him now, right? Because he's done. He's gone through a circle. He's done. So the question is, what's left for him to do? And what's left for him to do is recognize that identity is not individualistic. Identity is social. And somehow he starts grounding himself in others. Instead of using him as tests for his reality, he starts maybe giving them a space to test their reality, and being helpful and joyfully embracing the sorrow that is life, instead of being so narcissistic and making everybody answer his question for him, building a whole damn theme park to answer his question for him.
Sidebar, did anyone listen to LeVar Burton reading?
I haven't read it yet. No, I haven't. I know he's...
Okay, first of all, LeVar Burton reading Neil Gaiman is like reading Rainbow Plus.
Which book is he reading?
He read the one, We'll Get It For You Wholesale, the short story. Anyway, check it out. That's if I have anything I can give listeners at this point, is that you should go check out LeVar Reads.
I love this really obscure LeVar Burton movie, Dummy. Have you guys heard of it?
Yes.
Okay, so I love Dummy.
Burton, though, so
the internet is so creepy that I typed in his name so that I could pull up that story so that I could go back to it later, and it immediately pulls up LeVar Burton Dummy streaming. I could watch it streaming. So weird. I think this thing is always listening to me. I'm sorry.
It is always listening to you.
So hey, any final thoughts on this episode? I didn't think it was as philosophical as the others, but we got ourselves talking for quite a while.
I know.
about it.
You know what? I think it's because there's so much. I think, like you said, like identity development in this, and even though it doesn't feel like a huge like eye opening, they did close a lot of open ended questions, right? In terms of who did Dolores bring with her, blah 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 blah. And I feel that it was very small, but in the long run, like the long term sort of goal of this show, this episode will be very important.
Yes.
I remember watching it and being like, I don't frickin' know what the mind's gonna be. I don't like, what is this? But then the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? There's actually a lot of good moments that I think are setting characters up for their final end of the maze moment. I don't think William's the only one who's gonna have that moment. So
yeah, I just hope people didn't lose the significance of the final scene of this episode. It really was a season finale quality ending to the episode. And I'm thrilled that they did it like they did it, because that loop is just not in sync with the rest of the loops. And tough, that's life. And that's where you put it in the story. But I was just absolutely thrilled the way they handled it. So Leandra, Tara, please tell the listeners where they can find you on social media.
I'm Leandra Parris. You can find me on Twitter at Parris Leandra, at ParrisLeandra.
I'm Tara Rains, and you can find me on Twitter at TCRains2. That's TCRAINES2.
I'm Scott Jordan. You can find me on Twitter at Jordan Jam Party, JordanJamParty. You can find all episodes of Dark Loops Westworld on YouTube at the Dark Loops Productions channel. If you'd like to leave feedback about this podcast or about episode 5 of Westworld Season 3, leave it below on this YouTube channel, or send a message to darkloopsproductions@gmail.com. We'll be sure to read it at the end of our next podcast. So there it is. From all of us to all of you, big hugs. And remember, now is not the time for exiles. Bye-bye.
Bye.